the city of Coventry has been very influential in the car industry in England during the 20th century. The car industry in Coventry reached its manufacturing peak during the mid-1950s and met its sad decline in the early years of the 21st century. In this documentary, we will briefly cover the lead up to this peak and then its fall, covering the industrial action in the 1960s and the dramatic crash of the industry in the 21st century.
Coventry started off as a cycle manufacturing town, and lots of those cycle manufacturers turned to making cars. So in the early part of the 1900s, there were lots and lots and lots of car makers in the city, lots of cycle makers and lots of car makers. And then over that 20th century, a lot of those went bust.
Up until the 1960s, the car industry in Coventry continued to grow, becoming the biggest hub for producing cars in the country. However, by the middle of this decade, many workers' unions persuaded workers to commit to a large phase of industrial action. This caused many companies to go bankrupt and caused the loss of millions of jobs throughout the UK.
In the 70s, you actually had politics taking part, where you had political ideology taking over, where the unions were infiltrated to a large extent by left-wing individuals, and it caused many strikes that cost the companies a great deal of money.
The relationships between management and workers broke down quite a lot during the 1960s. There were many strikes for small reasons, strikes because of victimisation of some of the workers on the factory floor, and they didn't talk to each other. The management and the workers were just always at loggerheads.
The management as a whole was weak, and they tended to give way to the strikers, primarily because they couldn't afford, as I said before, to lose production. With the appointment, at the time, I mean, we're talking now 1979-ish, 80s, British Leyland was losing nearly £1 million a day.
After the situation was resolved, the car industry began to grow again. However, after just a few years, production and profits began to fall. This was in part due to the growth of car firms abroad, and the ability for companies to produce cars in countries such as Japan and China made it much cheaper than in the UK. By the beginning of the 21st century, many car companies had already pulled production from the city, and only a few firms such as Peugeot, Jaguar and LTI remain.
As a large car manufacturing town, there's no hope. I don't think car manufacturing will ever come back to Coventry. I don't think it was managed very well. I think after the war, we never had it so good. We were selling cars all over the world. There was no investment into it to make the industry stronger, to have stronger footing. And like I say, when foreign competition started to really grow, we weren't ready for it. It was badly managed in the terms of that it was badly managed as on factory floor, and it was also badly managed by government. We were smug. We didn't think we needed to invest. We never produced good cars later on, and the car industry failed because of that.
Despite the decline of the major car firms in Coventry, hope still lies in car manufacturing. Despite lowered profits during 2009, LTI are still an extremely strong car company and continue to grow as a business. As for smaller car companies, such as the Dutch supercar manufacturer Spyker, recently announced that it will be moving its main base of operating to the city, which will produce many jobs in Coventry.
Personally, I don't think there will be a large car industry in Coventry ever again. I think there may be some niche car makers in the city. There's a Dutch company called Spyker who have just moved into the city to make £100,000 supercars, and I think there might be a room for that in the city. There's also specialist vehicle makers like Modec who make commercial electric vehicles, who are having limited success, but again, a niche market. So I think there's room for those sort of industries, but I don't think there'll ever be massive car factories in Coventry.
Industry in Coventry, I think, has got a good future, but not in production, not in producing thousands and thousands of cars. A new car company has just come to Coventry, Spyker, which is a very high value company, where you're selling cars for many thousands of pounds. I mean, a Spyker, £200,000 at least. And these are very, very high quality cars, The new Jaguars are very high quality, but they're made at Castle Bromwich. But all the design, all the technology, all the advanced research is carried here at Whitley. There are over 5,000 workers in the Jaguar plant, research plant at Whitley. So it's not a small concern. But as for large-scale production, I don't think that it will change. But that's been Coventry's history. If you actually look back over the past 200 years, it's had an industry that's risen to become one of the finest in the world. It's died back, then another industry, and then another. And I think what will happen is that another industry, may be in a totally different sector, will come and fill the gap left by the motor industry.
As once known as a motor city, the realistic chance of mass production of modern-day cars in Coventry is highly unlikely, and it seems those prosperous days have gone.